There's not a week that goes by when I'm doing preparation for a sermon or some other message that I'm giving that I'm not employing the very tools and gifts that this gentleman gave me. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. I really mean that sincerely. It's been a profound blessing. And a word to describe what our lectures would be like is not a word you might expect. They were devotional. And they were devotional in the deepest way, where we left saying, I never saw that. I've never thought about that. I want more of that. So I'm always eager when we have the privilege of Dr. Doriani being in our presence, that you get to hear what I got to hear for 3 years, and you will be deeply encouraged. But as you listen, don't listen as one who simply wants to have some knowledge of God or even some knowledge of faith and work. Listen as one and from one who knows God, who loves Christ, who is abiding in him and seeking to bring him glory in all that he does. Let's welcome Dr. Dan Doriani.
Very kind, very kind. Well, it is great to be here, and every time I come to PC, which is about, maybe every 7 years, something like that, it's a joy to be here and see what God's doing in this church. It's my privilege today to talk about faith and work, and this says Faith and Work 101, and it was supposed to have a question mark at the end, because what I'm going to do is Faith and Work 101 for a little while, and then talk about Faith and Work, what I call 301 or 351 in the second half. So I have a little piece of paper here. If you see me shuffling papers, because I'm combining two talks. One is 101, one is 351, because I think you're probably ready for 351, not just 101. This talk began with an assignment. I was asked to give a talk that fit in a series, a conference called Jesus is the Light of the World. And I thought, I like that. I definitely think that works very well for a talk about faith at work. Now, you know that Jesus said, I am the light of the world. He said a variety of things. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I'm the good shepherd. I'm the Alpha and the Omega. He says in the book of Revelation, there's only one I am that he repeats in the Gospel of John, and that's I am the light of the world. That's the one he says twice. But he doesn't just say I am the light of the world. He also says you are the light of the world. I'm the light of the world. You're the light of the world. Let your light so shine that people may see your good works and praise you for how awesome you are. Did I get it wrong? And praise your Father in heaven. So that's maybe the highest ideal for faith at work, is that Christ would give you so much light that when you go into the workplace, people see the light of Christ and they don't associate it with how nice you are. They say, there's got to be something more to this than you are a nice person. And they begin to think of God the Father. You are the light of the world. Let your light so shine before others. In case you wonder, the Apostle Paul repeats this with a little bit of a turn because he knows that we are prone to complain sometimes. Paul says it this way, do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless in a twisted or perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. Everybody grumbles, you shine as the light. Now, the challenge when it comes to faith at work is that not only can we spread his light, but we often doubt the value of our work. If I've learned anything in speaking about faith and work over the years, it is that Christians doubt the significance of what they do. That's why, to be honest, when people say nice things at your introduction, we tend to wonder, who are you talking about? You must have me confused with somebody else. Because whatever he said about me doesn't really feel very true in terms of what actually happens in my soul, my mind, day by day. At the moment, you ask, how's my soul? Do I feel like I'm shining the light of Christ? No, I don't. I feel like I'm just doing my work, trying to be faithful. Almost everybody is that way. Now, I want to give you an illustration. There's a man I know. He doesn't let me use his name. I'm going to call him Jonathan Bird. Jonathan Bird is a man who buys and sells businesses that he believes are undervalued. And he has the ability to turn them around. For example, in St. Louis, there's an institution called the City Museum. It's really remarkable. People come from all over the North American scene to come to this amazing place. and fantastic artistry, nothing quite like it in the whole world. And he had a friend who started it who was a bad business manager, and it was about to go defunct. And Jonathan loves children and grandchildren, and so he said, well, I'll take it over. Millions of dollars in debt. He bought it for $1, even though it was a huge building and so forth. And within about 4 years, he was making $5, $6, $7, $8 million a year. He sold it for $50 million, and within 5 years, it was almost bankrupt again. They said, can we sell it to you for $1 again? We heard you bought it for $1. He said, no, I'm not going to do that again. It was a lot of work. He's a believer. He was also a man who bought a tiny little ventilator making company. They cranked out about 150 ventilators a month. And then it was up to about 300 a month. And he was all ready to sell his ventilator business when COVID struck. And he went, if you're a businessman or woman, you will get this. He went from about 200 a month to 10,000 a month in about 30 days. He became the world's leading manufacturer of ventilators in about 30 days. And he knew he could lose every last dime because of the way government regulations were, and then when it was over, it was over. And if you've ever started and stopped, and I said to him, Jonathan, it's amazing what you do. He said, I don't know, I just see business opportunities that other people don't see. I've been interviewing business people, for Christian business people and secular alike, for years, maybe 20 years now, 22 years now, and I hear those two words over and over again, I've heard it from Jonathan, my friend. I've heard it from people who make some of the greatest meals at restaurants in St. Louis and other places. I've heard it from CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, you name them, multi-billion-dollar firms. Over and over again, people say, I just. Mothers who stay at home say, I just wipe noses and change diapers. People who save the world say, I just. Now, sometimes the words I just are fair, and if you are wondering, I'm going to just tell you that I think it is accurate sometimes to say I just, if you just work for money, if you just do what you're told, if you're just trying to stay away from unemployment, if you are producing something that you know is garbage, like those pens we get, and the first time you click them, they explode all over the floor. Yeah, I just fits. But most of the time, I just does not fit, and we should see the value of our work. The problem of I just is we minimize the fact that Jesus tells us you are the light of the world, and you should be the light of the world. So it can be accurate. It can be needlessly pessimistic, but I'll linger over this one. What we need to do is appraise our work the way Jesus does. And the way Jesus does is that he sees the value of our work even if we don't. I'm going to read to you a passage you all know very well. It comes from Matthew 25, and it describes Jesus' appraisal of our work at the end of our life. Now, before I read it to you, I want to make sure we know that our work is not just the way we earn money. It is where we put the most effort, where we have the most capital, the most training, the largest team, the most focused organization of effort in our life. So our work is important, and we don't always see it, but Jesus does. Here's the passage, Matthew 25. On the last day, then the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came to me. And then the righteous will say, when was that? We don't remember that. We don't remember seeing you naked and clothing you. We don't remember visiting you in prison. We don't remember seeing you without water, without friends. And Jesus says, when you did it to one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did it to me. That is to say, at the end of our lives, when Jesus welcomes us into his presence, he will tell us what we did for him, and we'll say, I don't even remember that. He sees what we don't see. Let me give you a simple illustration. I'm a teacher. Like a lot of people who are teachers, I was not an easily taught person. When I was in 4th grade, I believed that my chief goal in school was to make everybody in my class laugh. And my 4th grade teacher immediately, within 4 days, separated me from my best friends. Within a couple more days, I was at the back corner of the room. And within 2 weeks, the 3 people around me were girls who refused to speak under any circumstances. My teacher on every last report card said, Danny is not living up to his potential. I believed, I saw this so much that I just thought, they write that to everybody. This is the only possible explanation of my report cards. She made sin, classroom sin, miserable. She gave me C's, which I definitely did not deserve. And when I was in grad school, I decided to write her a letter. I said, Dear Mrs. Wolf, you surely don't remember me, but I was the worst kid in your 4th grade class 16 years ago. And my family moved after 4th grade, and I was in another school, and I was afraid to misbehave or behave the way I usually did, and I accidentally got straight A's. And it felt so good to not have punishment and opprobrium heaped upon my head. I've kept it up ever since. I'm going to be getting my doctorate soon. And I got a letter back from the school. And it said, Dear Mr. Doriani, thank you for writing to Mrs. Wolf. She would have been so glad to receive your letter. She died 6 weeks ago. She never knew. But she was one of those teachers who defied the new Supreme Court ruling that said you can't read the Bible and pray before school. She defied it. She read the Bible and prayed. I don't know how many years, but my year it was illegal, and she did it every morning. So I'm just going to assume that she was a Christian. And she did know. She does know. She probably didn't remember me. And that little illustration, I believe, epitomizes what the life of a worker is like. You just don't know. Somebody comes up to you and thanks you for things you didn't even know you did, right? Like Mark Davis saying thank you to me for things I didn't know I did. How many of you have been thanked for something you had no idea you were doing? Every hand goes up, right? But of course, God knows everything you do. And God says to you who are workers, this is Faith and Work 101, you may think you're just earning a paycheck, you're just getting by, but Jesus says if you have anything to do with food coming to people who need it, by which I mean anything, marketing it, shipping it, transporting it, planting it, getting more valuable seeds, figuring out how to make plants need less water, how to transport it from here to there more efficiently than not. If you do anything that brings food to people, the Lord sees and blesses you. If you do anything in the entire process that brings water to the thirsty, that brings visitation to the sick, which would include medicine, anything in the medical field, including answering the phone and making appointments and billing. Yes, billing, it's part of the process. If you do anything in any of these fields and you offer it in love to the Lord and to the people around you, I'm not saying you have perfect love in your heart all the time, but if you fundamentally offer it in love and obedience, food, clothing, shelter, medicine, education, the Lord sees it. He sees it better than you do, recognizes it, blesses you, and wants you to pursue it. Now, this is a cure to, I don't usually use PowerPoint, so I forget to press the little clicker. So there it is. End of this one. We escape, by looking at things this way, we escape 2 mistakes that plague secular work and, to be honest, plague us as Christians. And the view is either we work to get rich or we work for personal fulfillment. Those are 2 possibilities. Now, you all know that it's very well attested by now that you should not seek work that is fulfilling. You should not follow your dreams. You should not try to find something that you delight in, because that's the great way to be poor. You want to be a poet? Go right ahead. You'll be waiting on tables at the age of 43. So don't seek fulfillment. Of course, that was the word for a long time. Seek fulfillment. If you love your work, you'll never work a day in your life, and so forth. Don't do that. That's one secular ideal. The other secular ideal that's more prominent today is find a job that's difficult and unsavory, ideally miserable, so that you'll be paid more than you deserve. You will only have to work 37 hours a week. You'll make just enough money to buy the kayaks you like. Don't go for a job that requires 60 hours a week. They'll pay you more, but you can't play afterward. So go for that job that pays you a little too much because it's onerous or rare, and then retire at the age of 52 and play the rest of your life. Those are the two secular ideals. And I'm going to say probably everybody here has been to some degree infected by one of those two. And the cure is to realize that we offer our work to the Lord. And he sees and values whether we see and value or not. So I'm going to go quickly through what I'm calling Faith and Work 101 and just make sure we know some basics, because every time we talk about faith and work, we always have somebody who's hearing about it for the very first time. And if you've heard this before, praise God, I'm glad it's taught here at this wonderful church. But the first thing we want to say about faith and work is that work is intrinsically good, not bad. God instituted work before the fall, not afterward. Work is not a curse. Work is now cursed. Work is now onerous and miserable because of thorns and thistles, but it is not intrinsically so. God told Adam and Eve, chapter 1 of Genesis, you know the fall occurs in chapter 3. Chapter 1, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and exercise dominion over it, over all the animals. So that's before the fall. He gave us minds and bodies. We're equipped for that. Chapter 2, he tells Adam to tend the garden and keep it, protect it, care for it. The fall occurs in chapter 3. The curse on the earth occurs in chapter 3. Work is intrinsically good. We see this in all kinds of ways, but maybe the best way is to recognize that God presents himself as a worker over and over in the Bible. He's a potter, we're the clay. He's an architect. He designed and executed his design for the world. He is a shepherd, that's a job. He's a king, that's a job. He's a warrior, that's a job. There are actually 30 different jobs that are ascribed to the Lord in the Bible as metaphors, but also describing what it actually does. So work is not a curse. The goal of work is not to offload it onto thousands of years ago slaves or animals or today AI. The goal is to work, to do good work. The Lord himself is a worker. That's number one. That also means that God solves problems. Jesus solved the problem of sin, and we should solve problems too. He accomplishes his plans. I said this last night. Forgive me for saying it again. In John 4, Jesus says, my will is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. That's in John 4, early. As Jesus dies on the cross, he says, it is finished. That is to say, I did what I came to do. I paid the price for sin. Now, of course, the resurrection is still coming, but that's the Father's work. So Jesus delighted in tackling a problem and solving it. Anybody here delight in tackling problems and solving them? I love a good, messy problem. Who can identify with me? I love a mess. There's one thing I love even more than loving a mess, and that's sorting it out and coming out stronger on the other end and say, you know, we solved this problem. By God's grace, we solved this problem. When you do that, you are echoing the nature of the triune God who solved the problem of sin and was delighted afterward. So work is delightful even when we are working on problems or when we're designing new things. Number two, we're not machines. The Lord sets a pattern for work and rest. You all know this. You've heard about it. You've read it in the Bible. I'm just going to ask you, would you please examine your life at some point and ask, if you trust the Lord enough to give a tithe of your money away, 10%, that's a lot. But if you trust the Lord enough to do that, I've got a bigger one for you. Give 14.1% of your time away. And believe that you can actually get more done resting in the Lord than by frantically toiling every day. The pattern of 6+1 is the cure for both lazy bones who want to work 2 days a week and for workaholics who want to work 7 days a week. The Lord honors both manual and mental labor. You don't have to look any further than Jesus, who was a carpenter. The Greek word actually is tekton, which means man who works, person who works with materials. It meant carpenter, woodworker, or stone worker, or metal worker. Jesus, he was a skilled laborer. But if you ask the question, what's Jesus called most often in the Bible? He's called a carpenter a couple times. He's mostly called rabbi, which means my teacher, or teacher, which he's called about 100 times. So that's manual labor and mental labor in the person of Christ. If you wonder, David was also, he was a shepherd, but also a writer and a composer of songs. The apostle Paul was also a tent maker and a teacher and an intellectual. So the Lord honors both manual and mental labor. Everyone serves God full time. Do you buy that? Who here thinks that pastors serve God full time and we don't? Nobody wants to raise their hand. Yeah, because you do believe it though. You know, we say, I'm just a businessman. I hope that at some point in my life I can enter into full-time service. If we learn anything from what Jesus said, if we're giving food, clothing, shelter, and so forth, we are serving the Lord full-time. Let me put it this way. If your work answers the legitimate prayers of God's people, you are serving the Lord. Give us this day our daily bread. If you drive a bread truck, if you market bread, if you check bread out at the grocery store, you are serving the Lord's people. Anybody here at this church ever pray for traveling mercies? You ever do that? How does that prayer get answered? It gets answered through engineers who make planes that do not fall from the sky. I was with a manifestly first-time flyer on the way over here. I mean, this woman had nothing in front of her, no book, no magazine, and she was doing her hands like this. I said, it's okay, you don't fly much, do you? She said, how could you tell? I said, the plane's not going to fall out of the sky. I explained Bernoulli's principle to her a little bit. She had no idea what I was talking about, but I felt knowledgeable to her. She calmed down. Engineers answer the prayer. Mechanics answer the prayer. Legitimate prayer for safety on the road. People who care about making cars and planes safe. Number 5. Proper conduct at work is not mysterious. The commandments are a reliable guide to virtue at work. You wonder how to serve the Lord at work? Here's a great place to start, the 10 Commandments. Don't steal from people. Don't think of ways to get more money than you deserve. Don't lie to people about your product. Don't put out a product that's dangerous, full of food dyes. You don't know what's in that food dye. Don't do that. Can I tell you that Christians really fail at this? I was, for the last 2 years, most of the time, interim pastor, lead pastor at Briarwood Presbyterian Church, which is a sister church to you. And, predictably, some people liked me, mostly because I brought my wife with me. But some people liked me, and they would say things like, hey, Dan, why don't you stay and be our senior pastor? And I said, well, I signed a contract saying I wouldn't do that you're looking for a senior pastor, a new one, a younger one, and that I would only stay here 12 months full-time or a little bit more if necessary. And they said, well, if we wrote the contract, we can tear it up. And I said, okay, fine. I promised my seminary I'd be back for the fall of 2025. And they said, seminary professors are easier to find than lead pastors. So don't worry about that one. Let's see. So I said, okay, I'm too old. They said, you don't look that old. I said, well, how I look and act, it's objective. Here's my birth date. You've worn me out already. I've only been here 9 months. They said, I don't know, we don't buy that. I said, okay. I have grandchildren back in St. Louis, and I promised a 4-year-old I will be back in the summer of 25. And they said, we capitulate. But a Christian, I don't mean one or two, I mean dozens of Christian people said to me over and over again, please break your promises. I'm not kidding. This is not a fun illustration. This is a report on the facts. Christians told me over and over again, it's no big deal to break your promises. Now, if I said that to them, they said, oh, well, we don't really mean that. But they did mean it. And Christians break the rules that they know are the way to live. So if you want to know how to live in your business, take the Word of God seriously. All right, that's 101. Now I'm going to go to 301 or 351. Leaders have a unique capacity to bring light to their corner of the world. I'm not saying you should change the world. I'm saying you should change your corner of the world. That's the idea. Not change the world, change your sphere of the world. Now, how do you do that? Well, you do that by doing things like treating all stakeholders well. Employees, suppliers, customers, next generation, by which I mean creation care, not leaving questions about the future of this world into the hands of other people, running up massive debts and saying, oh, my great-grandchildren won't mind paying for that, which the government does all the time. Now, how do you change the world? You change the world by big principles that you see that maybe other people don't see. For example, one of the people I've worked with at length in this area is a man who's in his field, a world-famous surgeon. And then as world-famous surgeons, he's a brain surgeon, and you have to have no wobble at all in your hands. And so he slowly started moving away from surgery itself because he knew that eventually my hands will start to tremor a tiny bit, and if you're working with the brain, you nick a nerve and it's a problem. And so he's moving toward research, and his research showed him that the people he operated on to save their life for cancers behind their eyes, which were 100% fatal when he started. Then he started getting into the follow-up, and he noticed that these patients got more chemo and radiation than they needed, and it fried their sinuses and their salivary glands. And these were often people they were children and people in their teens and 20s and 30s. And so imagine going the rest of your life without sinuses or without salivary glands, right? And he had a conviction. He has a conviction. He has a conviction that God gave the human body the capacity to heal itself because he has a variety of convictions. He's a very serious lay theologian. And we should unleash the powers of the body to heal itself. We're still interventionists. We still operate, but then we count on the body to heal itself. And we don't give every last possible bit of radiation and chemo that might possibly prevent the cancer from returning, because we believe God gave the body the capacity to heal itself. And we also believe that if there's 1/1000% likelihood that someone will die a little bit early when the cancer returns, recrudescence, maybe because we believe in eternal life, microscopically higher survival rates are not the most important thing. The quality of life counts too. Turned out that there was no difference, but he was willing to take a tiny risk. Now, that's a big principle that he had to fight for. He was excoriated, vilified, driven out because he was clashing with the radiation people at his major place. But he got to continue his research. Now, when you do this, you may say, oh, I'm not a famous surgeon, I'm not a CFO, CEO, I'm not the owner of my own business. You might be, in which case you have a lot of freedom. But a lot of people, when I say, look, you can change your corner of the world by bringing your principles to bear, by being the light of the world in your place, you can do that. A lot of people say, I don't have any authority. So I just want to make sure we understand something about authority. First of all, there's almost nobody in this world who has absolute authority. The CEO has to answer to the board. They can't do whatever they want. The owner of a corporation can't do whatever they want. They answer to the customers and the suppliers. We know this. But beyond that, anybody who has a role in the organizational chart, anywhere above the bottom, you have some influence. And even if you have no formal influence at all, if you have a skill set that makes you the guy, by which I mean the person, this being the Midwest, sort of, the guy, meaning the human, who knows a lot about X, you just have, if you're going to do that, you better talk to so-and-so. No place in the org chart, but if you're an expert, and your voice matters, you have influence. You also can change your corner of the world in a formal or informal position, especially if you have enough passion to persevere in what you're talking about. I hate the word passion, it's overdone, but something has to drive you. If you want to change the corner of the world that you're in, you need to understand that there will be resistance. Machiavelli said, I like to quote Machiavelli. I like to quote Mao Zedong whenever I possibly can. So here's Machiavelli. Machiavelli, to this point, said, when someone proposes a change, those who could possibly suffer loss from the change will see clearly what they lose and oppose it, while those who might gain tend to not see as clearly what they might gain. Therefore, there will always be initially more opposition than favor. Therefore, people will drag their feet, they will sabotage, they will say yes, and they will live no, and you have to persevere through it. You have to care enough to persevere. Now, how does that happen? And here, I'm going to turn to an exhortation that will pivot to what you can do in this church. I'm going to ask you to turn to Luke chapter 12, and we're going to look at two verses. The first verse is 20, and the second verse is 48. Luke chapter 12, verse 48. And Luke chapter 12, verse 48 says something like this, the translations vary. From everyone to whom much has been given, much will be demanded. And from him to whom they have entrusted much, they will demand the more. That's a mouthful. It's a really good translation, but here's what it means. It's convoluted enough. I almost think Luke wrote it this way so you'd have to read it 5 times to understand it. But it's pretty simple. If God gave you a lot, he expects a lot. If God gave you high energy, he expects you to use it. If he gave you a high intellect, he expects you to use it. If he gave you a lot of training, formal and informal through mentors, he expects you to use it. Most of the people here have been given much. Maybe every last person here has been given much. And so if you've been given much, you should use it, which means you should try to be the light of the world. Shine the light of Christ in your corner of the world. Luke chapter 12, verse 20, so I didn't bring my Bible. I have it on my phone and on my computer, but I'm just going to give you the paraphrase. In this parable of the rich farmer, who remember has fields that are so productive that he literally doesn't know what to do, tears down his barns, build bigger ones. I'm going to eat, drink, and be merry, and it's a Jesus Bible ironic joke. He says, I'm going to eat, drink, and be merry, and Jesus says, yeah, and tomorrow you're going to die. And then the things that you laid up, whose will they be? Now, there's the word that's used for rendering an account on the last day is the word apaiteo, which means God will ask for an answer. He will demand an answer for what he gave you. And the word that's used, for those of you in finance, is actually used of loans. The word apaiteo is used for recalling a loan. Your life, everything you have, everything you earned is a loan. The same word is used in Luke 12:48. It's all a loan. All your gifts are a loan. All your produce is a loan from God. It's not yours. It's loaned to you, and you will render an account for that loan to God. Therefore, not a guilt trip, just saying it's all a loan. How are you going to use it? God didn't give it to you simply to enjoy. So how are we going to change our corner of the world? And the answer is found in Luke 12, and I'm going to close my little lid here and go off in another direction. I want to talk about the possible future of this church a little bit. And you've had a Faith and Work ministry for a long time here, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful for that. You know that not all churches have a ministry like that. And in fact, a lot of churches cast doubts on ministries of faith and work, and they have reasons. The reasons include, you Faith and Work people, you adopt, just shoot your hand up if you know this one. You adopt a Christ transforms culture approach to the culture. Who knows that phrase? Christ transforms culture. 3 people. All right, I'm bringing new ideas. Let me try it again. Mark, raise your hand. You've heard this. Okay, everybody has heard this phrase. Christ transforms culture. Bill, raise this. Come on. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Can you keep them up for more than 2 seconds? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, 15 people. All right. So that's a view. It's not the only view people have about Christ and culture. It's an optimistic view, and a lot of Christians think it's wrong. They think it's wrong because they say, don't you know that Satan is the prince of this world? We're not going to get much done. All we really should do is save souls and be kind to the people around us and take care of our families. Furthermore, they say, in a free market or capitalist, I like market economy better. In a market economy, the profit motive is going to defeat all reforms. If money's to be made, people are going to make the money. It's an exercise in futility. The third objection people raise is, what are you doing spending your time on changing the world through business? Don't you understand that we have a world of billions of people who are going to hell? What we need to do is evangelism and discipleship. Prayer, devotion, worship, evangelism, discipleship. Stop talking about faith and work. Do what we know is right. Discipleship is what counts. And my answer is, teaching people to show their faith at work is discipleship. It is discipleship. It's where you spend most of your waking hours Monday to Friday. It's where you have the most contact with unbelievers. The Bible tells us on multiple occasions that we should adorn. Have you read that in translations? The word actually is cosmeo, which is where we get cosmetics, beautify yourself. The word really means beautify. Make the gospel beautiful by your life. You are the light of the world. Let your light so shine that men will see, not you, but your Father in heaven. In other words, if you're showing your faith at work, it is discipleship. You are learning how to use your gifts, how to love the people around you, and it will lead to evangelism organically, naturally, because people will eventually start asking questions like, what motivates you? I want to know you. What makes you tick? How many of you had that question put to you in a good way? What makes you tick? Not in a bad way. What makes you so nasty and gnarly? So there is no dichotomy. Now, some people say also between faith and work and evangelism, discipleship, all works together. Some people say, and I respect this, Dan, you're an academic, you're a pastor, you don't know what you're talking about. I make steel. I make shower stalls that don't work properly, like mine this morning. You can't step in, you can't turn it on without drenching yourself in ice water. That's fun. Who designed this? Somebody who never takes a shower, obviously. That might come from this morning. Okay, so you don't know anything about this world. You don't know how to make a shower stall. You don't know how to make a water system. You don't know how to put a building up. Don't you know that it has to be done the same way? Don't you know that a hamburger is a hamburger is a hamburger, whether you're a Christian or non-Christian? Don't you know that light bulbs and showers are made the same way? There's a way to make it, and then there's a way that makes a profit, and there's a way that doesn't because it's inefficient. And I say true and false. A hamburger's a hamburger, but restaurants are prone to certain kinds of problems, including bad sourcing of meats, sourcing meats that come from animals that were treated horribly. And the restaurant world is prone, I've worked in it, prone to stay up till 1 or 12 and then unwind with drugs and alcohol and so forth. And you either are or you are not playing the role of pater familias, taking care of your people. And you either do or do not have a place that's loaded with drunks and drug addicts and people who sleep around mindlessly. And so a hamburger's a hamburger, but a workplace varies. And light bulbs are light bulbs. But did you source your materials well or poorly? Exploitatively? Did you treat your people well, or did you try to grind the last half penny out of them? So yeah, a light bulb's a light bulb, and yet, if you're in the field, you know there are differences. And you can practice love and justice in all that you do. So what I'm saying then is concretely in this church, I'm recommending, I'm not doing this blindly. I did talk to Mark and Paul and others yesterday. I said, this is what I would like to say. And they said, you can say it. The next phase in faith and work life is to create vertically organized discipleship groups where lawyers get together, and you have a wise, biblically literate lawyer who has some time, maybe they're freshly retired or unspooling their career, and you get one of your pastors who says, you know what, I'll study that. I'm going to become a lay expert on principles of law, and they're the co-leaders, and then you get a bunch of lawyers in a room, and you give them some materials, you have them read a book or so, you put the basic Bible passages in front of them, and then the pastor, the theologian, says, I'm going to give you what I know theologically and biblically, and I'm going to step back and let you work with integrity on how to apply this in the systems that you know. Because we like to say in America that the legal system's adversarial. Yeah, if there's a trial, it's adversarial. But it's actually not adversarial most of the time. If you spend time with lawyers, you say, oh, the adversarial system, they go, wait a second. Because they know so much more about law than you do if you're a pastor. So put them in a room. Put the trial lawyers and the real estate lawyers and the family lawyers and the intellectual property lawyers in a room and let them work on it. And similarly with entrepreneurs. Put a pastor in there. Here's some Christian principles of business. Put some Christian business leaders who've really thought long and hard, and then put a bunch of other people in the room and talk for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks. Maybe have some projects at the end. I believe that's the future. I'm going to look at my clock and see how much time we have. I believe that's the future for the church. I've had the privilege of getting entrepreneurs together with each other. And you know what the best moment is when I lead a study with a group of entrepreneurs? The best moment is when they start ignoring me and talking to each other. And I'm just sitting there thinking, they don't need me at all. I gave them some principles, and now they're having a debate about how to practice them in their workplace. And after the meeting's over, they debate it some more, and they make proposals, and away they go. Away they go to give the light of Christ to the world. Jesus said, I'm the light of the world, and he says, you're the light of the world. And the Apostle Paul says, shine like stars in a crooked and perverse generation. That's my hope and my prayer for this church. Let me pray for you for a minute. We have time for how many questions? We have time for some questions or comments. Let's just pray together for a moment. Lord, I thank you for this church. I thank you for the witness it is right here in this spot in Dallas, one of our great cities. Thank you for the profile we have here, the way there are a lot of leaders and a lot of deep Christians and a lot of shallow Christians and a lot of non-Christians coming and people looking for direction in life and knowing whether they fully comprehend it or not, that if they follow you, it's a matter of being all in, not just having their soul saved, but having all their life, all their energy redirected under you, Lord, the King, and building your kingdom. And so, Lord, I pray that this church, which has the enormous privilege of preaching the gospel and receiving visitors just because the building is big and people wander in, they don't even know why they're here. Thank you for that privilege, and I pray that this church would wisely and lovingly and beautifully use that privilege in all that it does, all the discipleship ministries, including the ministry of carrying our faith into our work so that it permeates it. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. All right, so what always happens after I cover things like this is that there are no questions. It's like, you ever drop like a really heavy something on your toe when you were barefoot and it doesn't hurt at first? You know you're in trouble, right? So this is we're in trouble because I dropped too many ideas and it just hurts. And it'll take a few seconds for people to realize, oh, I have a question or objection or something like that. And Mark is going to start us off because pastors are always ready with a comment or question, and then that'll give you all time to prime the pump. Mark, what do you want to? He's waving a microphone in front of your face.
Sam has a question.
Ask the second best question you have, and leave the best one for somebody else.
I think you kind of did a great job sharing a bit of from the Word on kind of a broader picture on the Faith and Work 101. As you think about opportunities, maybe from more of a kind of a prophetic voice, like where do you see in what industries the greatest opportunities for Christians to step in and let the light shine?
Inviting me to give a prophetic voice as to where the greatest opportunities. It sounds like an evasion, but it's not meant that way at all. The greatest opportunity is the one that you see, because I can't pretend I know more than I do. One of the great dangers for pastors is pretending to know more than they do, right? And I don't know enough about design, architecture, building, even though I have a child there. And I don't know enough about education, even though I have a child there. I don't know enough about marketing, even though I have a child there and I listen. They see it better than I can. And you know, I know there's a lot of real estate, for example, and there's a lot of energy in this area. But you know it so much better than I do that you're the ones who are going to detect the best way. I mean, obviously in the energy field, I'll say just this much. I do believe that creation care is forgotten, even by Christians, and there's a pursuit of the deal. We got to make a deal, close the deal, finish the deal, make it pay off so we can have another deal, without adequate consideration of the long-term consequences of a deal. So maybe there's something visible here, but you're truly, it's not false humility, it's genuine humility. You know best what you can do in your field, especially if you're talking to fellow disciples.
Thank you for that. That was really great. Okay, so going back to what you described as the groups, you get the lawyers in a group or whatever. Mm-hmm. Let's say this church want to do it, or some people here want to do something like that.
Yes, I hope you do. Yep.
So are there any materials out there, pre-existing materials, books, studies that would be good to use in that environment you already know off the top of your head that you could recommend to us?
Yeah. There are books. I'm going to recommend, for example, a book. I had them in my notes, but I want to leave more time for Q&A. A man named Robin John, who is, you have his book right there or something. Robin John's called The Good Investor. And he is, in what would, you know, if you're in the investment field, it's a well-written, personable, theologically rich, and he lives it, story about how you invest in companies. So he has a firm, an investment firm called, I can't remember it suddenly, Eventide. Thank you. Eventide. And Eventide is, what they say is, we only invest in firms that clearly promote the common good. That's a phrase everybody uses now. It actually comes from the Apostle Paul. So we're not going to invest in companies that make candy. Not that we think candy is evil, but it's not clearly good. Coca-Cola, no. Video games, no. Not because it's evil, but because it's not clearly manifestly promoting the common good. And of course, people are always nervous about so-called virtue investing, but long-term studies show that the returns are identical to others, to firms that buy tobacco companies and so forth. So that's one. And I like it because it's from the ground up. A lot of businesses start with, I'm a Christian, and then I'm going to do my business, and then you just kind of follow the way of business until the very end. It's like, I should give money away and treat my people well. But it's good from the bottom up. So there's actually others, but he's one. A man named Brett Smith, who's at Miami University of Ohio, is worth following. Sorry? Okay. You threw me off there. Anyway, Brett Smith is also a guy named Brent Beshore, who has a network in Columbia, Missouri, of all things. These people are all people I've interviewed on my podcast, so you can get more clues that way. So there's definitely books about law. I didn't bring them with me, but there are good Christian books about faith and law. That's almost the easiest one. Much harder is to find literature, to my knowledge, about Christians and medicine or Christians and construction. I've never seen anything. Somebody's got to have written something. And honestly, if the next step in the faith at work process is to get people to write in narrow areas, even if it's only 20 pages, just to get people started, and then people can use their expertise from there. So law is there, and investing is, there's resources are there, in other areas, not much.
When people think about faith and work, or just what is it that maybe God has gifted them with in terms of what they should pursue in terms of a career or work or something like that, where do you see that concept of learning about your spiritual gifts, learning about your special natural gifts that you were born with, perhaps you're fast or strong or whatever, and then using those things to discern where God is calling you, either in so-called secular work or ministry or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, of course, most churches teach people about their spiritual gifts. And, are you a leader, a teacher, et cetera. But I do believe that the refinement occurs by praying about your workplace, talking to fellow Christians about your workplace if you share a similar occupation, and just keeping your eyes open. And then you start to see things. In my experience, it works best when a Christian simply goes to work expecting that they can possibly make a difference in their workplace. They can be light. But you have to keep your eyes open to see what the problem is before you can solve it. So it's often a result of maybe a sentence or a paragraph in a sermon or a Bible study or book, and it just sparks somebody to say, I can solve this problem. I can be an agent of redemption, not the big redemption, but the small r redemption in the world. Most people just have their eyes open within their field. You got one more, Scott? Or we're done. We're done. Great.
So,
before the really hard questions came, thank you for saving me.
They're going to stay in line afterwards. He'll stay as long as you want. Just line up.
All right.
But then I'll interrupt because we're going to go have coffee.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, a couple of very quick announcements. First of all, we have a PCPC Global Missions Conference coming November 1st and 2nd. And if you're not part of our church, certainly would welcome you to come. If you're in a church already, certainly continue to be the man or woman God's called you to be there. But this is an exciting time for us. If you are a member of our church, please faithfully pray for that weekend. I want you to know, though, this isn't just about us hearing from missionaries all over the world, though that's going to happen. If you heard nothing else today, you need to know is that wherever God has placed you, you are a missionary to islands I can't get to. Mm-hmm. You are around people that I won't necessarily be able to connect to in ways you already can. So delight in who you are in Christ and the place he's put you. Pray for this conference fervently. The missions team has asked us to pray at 9:37 each day from that passage that talks about the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Pray for that reality, but pray with an open ear that you would hear that you are one of the harvesters. And many of you are already doing that. Take the things that you heard today and just continue to ask the Lord, how do you want to use me where you are? We're going to take seriously the invitation, the call, the exhortation to enable groups to begin to join that way. If that piqued your interest, if you're thinking about what might that look like, there may be resources that are actually generated from women and men in this room this morning based on what they heard in fields where not much has been created already. So that's very exciting. So again, November 1st and 2nd, brothers and sisters, pray fervently for that time. And then Sam's got a couple of announcements and we'll close in prayer. Before you step away, Dan, thank you. We are so grateful for what you've given us this day. Yeah.
Yes, thanks. And thanks just for being here this week. We just so appreciate you and the blessing it's been to hear from you. I love what Dr. Doriani said about discipleship, and that this is really about discipleship and how all this is connected to discipleship. For those of you that are members here at PCPC, we want to know how we can better disciple you if the workplace, for all of our members, but specifically this morning, if the workplace is your primary place of call to ministry. If the way we can do that best is actually to hear from you and to hear about the things that you want to be formed in, and even how to be intentional about forming those groups that Dr. Doriani mentioned around industry. So you have some comment cards at your table that actually help us know where it is that you work and serve. And what are your greatest needs as you think about on the formation side to be more equipped to do that? One idea that we have about gathering is simply to gather for lunch, maybe on a quarterly basis, every other month basis, after our midweek communion service, Word and Table on Wednesdays in industries to talk about how it is that we go back out to the workplace. So that's one idea that we have, but we want to know, does that actually meet a need that you guys have? So please take some time now to fill out those cards in the center of your table. They say PCPC missions on the top, so we can know better how to serve you and help you be more equipped to where God has sent you. So that's really it for today, and just be praying about this. Pray for your industry. Pray for your industry at PCPC, even as you're praying that 937 prayer. And I actually would be potentially excited about even that connection between work and global. I think there's great opportunity there as you think about the gospel extending and extending that transforming presence of the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ there. Okay, I'm actually going to end us with a bit of since Dan Doriani prayed, kind of a benediction. And so if you would stand up, I'm going to read some scripture over you this morning. Lift your eyes to heaven and hear the word of the Lord for you. This comes from Isaiah 60, verses 1 through 5. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord has risen upon you. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples. But the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will be seen upon you. And nations shall come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. Lift up your eyes all around and see. They all gather together. They come to you. Your sons shall come from afar, and your daughters shall be carried on the hip. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and exult, because the abundance of the sea shall be turned to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Go and serve the Lord.